We're now in a position to start capturing the lessons in our timetable. We click back on the Manage Timetables option, and then we're going to click on the Lessons option next to the timetable that we want to manipulate. You'll see that for most of these grades we're sitting on 0 lessons assigned, but for some of them, some already have been added to the timetable. What I'm going to do now is click on the Edit option next to grade 12 so that we can assign some of the grade 12 lessons. This list at the top shows each of the classes in grade 12 and further down all of the classes that don't involve any grade at all. This is so that you can choose these teams or these groups to be part of your timetable. This might be useful for something like assemblies, for example. At the top we have a filter box which allows us to type in a text filter that will be matched against these classes. So for example, if I were to type in the phrase Afric, I would get all of the Afrikaans classes in this particular school. I could also search by teacher name, so for example Norton, and here are all the classes that Mr. Norton teaches. Simply by removing the filter, I will get back all of my classes. Another way to filter, depending on how you've named the classes in your school, is to search by your class description. So for example, in this school, all of the choice subjects, the elective subjects, have been grouped into lines, and I can use this to group and search for example, line 6. And this will let me find all of the classes that have L6 in this case in their descriptions. What I'm going to do first though is to search for the additional language subjects, Afrikaans and Zulu. I now look at my timetable and I start ticking off the lessons where these classes are taught. Once I've captured all of the lessons, I simply click on the Save Lessons button, and these are now added to the timetable. I can see that they're added because of the number 5 that now appears next to them. This means that there are 5 lessons that have been captured with this particular period. It's not showing in this video, but normally when you hover your mouse over this lesson, it will show you the different classes that have been captured. Additionally, you'll see that all the lessons that we assigned Afrikaans to, or the additional languages to, are highlighted in yellow. If I were to click on the number, it will select all of my additional language classes, and it will tick all of the boxes where additional language is taught. This will allow you to include other things, like for example French, which wasn't included in our additional languages, and I can then click on Save Lessons. French will now be added to all of those, and will now have 6 showing in those brackets. If however I've made a mistake and I want to remove French, because French in this particular case is actually a second additional language, then I can click on the brackets, and when I do so my lessons are highlighted, and then control click on French and that will deselect that lesson. If I were to save now, nothing would happen and no change would be made, and French would still be a part of that particular grouping. In order to remove French, I've got to tick on this option at the bottom, which says to replace all existing classes on the selected lesson. This is done intentionally so that you can add classes to lessons as you go. Once I've done that, I can click on Save the Lesson, and those 6s should change back to 5s to indicate that one less class has been captured. I would continue this way to capture all of the classes and all of the groups on my timetable. Let me have a look at mathematics as a second example. Of course, as we are adding these classes, it becomes important to know which are maths lessons and which are, in this case, Afrikaans lessons. And you'll notice that as I hover over what is an Afrikaans lesson versus what I hover over as a maths lesson, so different lessons on the timetable are highlighted. Recording timetables for junior grades is a little different. And so while we can do things for English, for example, where in this particular school they're all taught English at the same time, when it comes to other lessons like geography and history, for example, they are taught separately. Now this does take a little more time and a little more effort. In order to capture something like geography, for example, for 8A, I would select it and then select the lessons on the timetable where 8A have geography. And in this case, they happen to have those 3 lessons, and once I've done, I can click on Save Lessons. I now see on the timetable that there's been 1 lesson assigned. So for example, on day 1, lesson 6, while 8M have geography, 8A have EMS. And so I can type in a filter to find economic management studies and tick on day 1, lesson 6. However, they don't follow the same pattern, and so the next time 8A have EMS is on day 4, lesson 5. And after that on day 8, lesson 7. And so now when I save, only one of them is shared with another subject, and I click on Save. We now have 2 lessons assigned to that period and 1 to all of the others. You'll notice that as I hover over this lesson, the others do not highlight because they are not the same set of subjects. Let's have a look at a timetable that's already been completed. I'll have a look at a grade 10 timetable. But now for each day, in order to get a summary, I can click on the Detail option. And when I do that, it simply tells me for lesson 1 which classes are involved. This is a useful tool to double check your timetable later on.